all profit is value extraction. And that means that all profit is theft from you.
Corporate America is on welfare, and we got to get them off welfare.
The last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary, and you're going to have to keep on saying that.
Hi, my name is Bryant, and welcome to Cars and Comrades, the automotive podcast with a leftist perspective. In this first introductory episode, we're going to introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about our goals and vision for the podcast. We'll also have a brief history segment at the end. It's about a weird libertarian boat built to exploit a loophole in regulations in the 1800s. So if you're interested in just that, skip ahead to about the 42-minute mark. But if you want the full sort of parasocial relationship experience, go ahead and keep listening. We'll also have an episode out very soon, or maybe even concurrently with this one, where we discuss some current events in the car world from a leftist perspective. So look for that. I should also mention that all the music in this episode is from the album Polygon Wannaland by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. We use this music, well, just because we like it, but also it's a free album with a Creative Commons license, so you can remix it and use it however you want. So check it out if you like sort of psychedelic prog rock. The link will be in the description. If you're a musician and you have some music that you want to share with us, send it in to us and we might put it in the show. So how did this get started? Well, I've been fascinated with cars and mechanical things since I was a little kid, and I've only really gotten into left-wing politics in the last maybe 5 years, 6 years or so. I also listen to a lot of car podcasts, or just podcasts in general, but unfortunately a lot of car content out there is either made by boring libs, which is fine, or at worst right-wing reactionaries. And that contains a lot of toxic masculinity and other bad things that we want to avoid. So that reason is partly why we chose the name Comrades as part of the name. It's a gender-neutral term, and we want to include everyone, even though the four of us involved right now are cis white dudes. We also want to explore the ways that cars and transportation more broadly intersect with politics, history, and the environment. So a little bit more on that later with that boat I mentioned. There's already podcasts out there that cover pro wrestling, engineering disasters, conspiracy theories, whatever, from a leftist perspective. But as far as I know, we're the only one, or the first one at least, to do a leftist car podcast. So we'd like to involve you, the listener, as much as possible. And if you have any ideas of stuff that you want us to talk about, or if you have some polite criticism, please email us. The address is carsandcomrades@gmail.com. All spelled out, no weird characters or anything. And we also have social media accounts on all the usual places. You can just search for Cars and Comrades and you'll probably find it. Our Instagram has underscores instead of spaces, Cars and Comrades podcast. Twitter has an ampersand, Cars ampersand Comrades podcast, and I think it's the same on Facebook. So I'll put the links in the description for those also. So anyways, I had this sort of half-formed idea to make a leftist podcast about cars and transportation, but none of my friends in real life were really all that interested. At least they didn't want to work on my dumb project for free. So I mentioned my ideas on a Street Fight Radio call-in show. They were conveniently talking about the Mazda Miata and whether it's a sports car, and of course it is, so I had to set the record straight on that. But I also brought up my idea for a podcast and put my email out there, and so I had a dozen people email me and with various levels of interest in the idea. So these are the 3 people weird enough to stick around and listen to my dumb ideas. And, of course, they brought some of their own ideas, too. I don't think I could have done this by myself. But sorry to throw shade on you guys and call you weird.
I'm shady, I get it.
So let's go around and everyone say your name, what cars you currently own or are driving, maybe a little bit about your political tendency, and any ideas for the podcast that I hadn't already mentioned. Guess I'll go first. I said my name's Bryant. I have a 2005 Saab 92X Aero, which also called a Subaru. It's basically a Subaru WRX with Saab styling, one of those badge engineered cars. And I also have a 1986 Toyota MR2, which has electrical problems. The turn signals aren't working, so that is sidelined right now. I generally call myself a socialist. I'm pretty comfortable with that label. But I've been reading more Marx and Lenin lately, and, they have some good things to say, so if someone calls me a communist, I'm not going to be offended. And I definitely call myself a Maoist when it's time to pay the rent every month. But I've been a DSA member for a few years now, but because of my weird work schedule and, of course, this whole pandemic thing, I'm not as involved with the chapter as I'd like to be. There's all kinds of committees that I can't make it to. As far as motorsports, I've been involved with the 24 Hours of Lemons racing series a little bit, but only maybe 5 to 10 laps total. Almost every time I've gone out there, there's been a mechanical problem. Something breaks down. We did an engine swap on one car, and I believe that Lemons is doing a season this year, 2020 and 2021, with some safety measures for COVID, but I didn't really want to get involved. The track that's closest to me doesn't have very good bathroom facilities, and I don't want to be doing any more risks than I have to. So maybe next year. We'll see. We'll probably have some other Colorado Lemons racers on as guests in future episodes, so look for those. So, Brandon, I think you were next. Is that right?
Yes, sir. All right. Where do we start? So, I'll start with politics, man. Like, there was never really a time when I wasn't, at least to some degree, into leftist politics, even when it was like being a fucking 16-year-old, like, snotty punk kid who was, like, into anarchism beyond just, like, superficial, like, whatnot. At this point, I'm pretty comfortable identifying as a Marxist-Leninist. I don't think it's really a perfect summary of what I'm about, but I respect it. The immortal science of Marxist-Leninism. Car-wise, man, I was much later to the game, man. I was so broke in my 20s that it never really, like, came into my purview. But I have a buddy who, came into a little bit of money later on and got some cool cars. And the more he was turning wrenches on stuff and talking to me about it, the more I got into it. And I had, like, always been into old vans. It's like the 60s Econoline is what really got me into, like, learning more about cars. I really wanted, like, an early, like, flat front mid-engine Econoline. I never got the Econoline. I still don't own any Fords. But I found me an early Chevy, a flat front Chevy, like, mid-engine. It was a real hunk of shit. And my options were to pay, like, an exorbitant amount of money to have everything fixed on this thing, or to learn to do it myself. So I got more and more into learning to do it. Like, buying that old van is what taught, like, I learned how to run machines and learned how to weld and pretty much anything else you do. I don't change my own tires or do my own alignment, and that's about it. And I'm 37, and that was when I was 30, so I've been doing this for a little over 6 years now. That math doesn't work out because I recently had a birthday. I got on this podcast because I listen to a lot of podcasts too. I heard Bryant call into Street Fight one day, and he's arguing that Miatas are sports cars, and I'm like, man, I got to email this motherfucker and set him straight. Miatas are not sports cars.
We'll have to have this discussion another time.
No, like no, I'm trying to start shit right now in the introductory episode because I want people to know who I am, and that is a person who is willing to cause problems from the get-go.
My mouse is hovering over the button to kick you off the call right now. So,
yo, that's fair. I respect that choice. I am not close enough to fight you, so you do what you got to do.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Mostly I'm a van guy. Like I've got a 69 Chevy van. That's like the flat front mid-engine one that I'm currently fixing up. When I'm done, it's gonna have like a full like 70s boogie interior, like shag carpet and probably some wood paneling and mirrors and probably like a 400 horsepower Chevy 350 motor. I got a 67 Cutlass. That's my muscle car. I got real weird with that. The whole interior is like two-tone faux fur, and I like learned to like do upholstery and sew to do that. It's not finished, but I think I'm going to be the resident like classic muscle guy in the group. Everybody else seems to like their imports. My daily driver is a 1975 Chevy van with a boogie interior and a 327 out of a Corvette. I got a 1965 G10 that it's really like in parts right now, but I'm wanting to build it to drag race. My eventual goal with that is to have a 632 big block Chevy supercharged with nitrous. I want to be putting about 1,000 horsepower to the rear wheel, but I ain't got the kind of money to build that right now. My eventual goal was to have a shitty old 60s van that will smoke any stock demon on the road. Beyond that, like politics wise, like I haven't really been that active lately, man. Like a lot of people that are probably on this podcast and listen to it, I got some mental health issues and they slow me down a lot in life, but I'm hoping to get organized with the PSL and SRA here locally once COVID is no longer just ruining everybody's lives. And that's I guess that's about what I've got to say, man. Like unless you want to count the like half dozen other vans that I've got that are all for parts, because I literally just hemorrhage money on dumb shit that I see from Craigslist. So that's what I'm about. Shit boxes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think shit boxes is going to be a kind of a theme on this show. That's come on, they get us all at some point.
Realistically, it should be, dude. No one in our generation has any fucking money to spend on stuff. Like boomers all want $75,000 for their dumb like Mopar. I'll buy whatever I can fucking afford for $1,500. If it runs, I'll pay $2,000 for it. Shit.
Yeah, that's definitely been a common theme for me, at least in my early 20s, for sure.
Yeah, I've had my fair share of shit boxes. I drove a Kia Spectra for a couple of years. That was, well, I mean, it wasn't terrible. It drove and ran. It was an appliance, but
dude, my daily driver van has been running for 2 years with a bypassed neutral safety or neutral safety switch that I bypassed with a piece of wire I found on the ground. So that's how I roll.
Hey, it works. It works.
Yeah, it does. Well, I mean, sort of. It works in park. It works in drive. It works anytime it shouldn't.
All right. Well, I think that is my cue. So, my name's Connor. I'm not exactly sure how I should be starting this, but I suppose I'll start with the politics. When I was young, I was actually a right-wing reactionary myself. Like actual conservative family values, hate gay people, racist, sexist, all of it. For reference, my father listened to Rush Limbaugh pretty regularly at work, and I would, do painting jobs with him all the time. So I thought Rush was pretty cool. I later learned that he is not cool. He's awful. I hate him. I think he is damaging a lot of people's brains, unfortunately. But I was fortunate enough to have some pretty cool friends when I was young who kind of pushed me on my beliefs, and I lost a lot of arguments, and I couldn't figure out why. So when I challenged those ideas, I kind of started to go, oh, yeah, I guess those are some pretty stupid reasons to, believe the things I do. So over time, I changed. That took years and years. I got into punk rock, and so I was like, yeah, no government, that's cool. But I didn't quite understand that capitalism was like why the government existed. So for a while, I was a right-wing libertarian. And then I became a lib for a while, and of course, my heart was in the right place, like most liberals. But eventually, I started to notice, like, hey, these liberal solutions are not quite solving the clear issues. So then I started looking into people like Bernie Sanders. So right around 2015, when Sanders started his run, I started to be like, hey, he makes sense. I like what he's got to say. And then to fend off right-wing attacks, I decided, you know what? I should learn the difference between democratic socialism and socialism. And then I became a socialist. So, personally, right now, I generally identify myself as an anarcho-communist or just an anarchist, depending on who I'm talking to. I'm not super rigid on that. And I generally support the idea behind left unity, because I think pretty much any Marxist-Leninist is generally pretty spot on in my book. I maybe have some mild disagreements, or I say, hey, I prefer going this route in terms of organizing when we can. But, so I guess I would say, and I'm sure I'm going to catch some flack for this when people listen, I would call myself an anarcho-communist with maybe ML tendencies. So I'm sure some people will hate that, but
Dude, I'm
not...
an ML with ANCOM tendencies, so I got you, man. We're good.
Yeah, see, we're all on the same page. We're all fighting for revolution. Fuck capitalism. That's the key. If you can get that far, you're all right in my book.
And Connor, my political arc was basically identical to yours, except replace Rush Limbaugh with Focus on the Family. So pretty similar.
Yep. That's
conservative to liberal to socialist sort of path. Yeah,
I feel like that's a more common trajectory than a lot of people give it credit for. And to our credit, I don't see the same kind of pattern going the other way, which I think stands to. I'll amend that as soon as I meet a few former socialists who are now fascists or conservatives or whatever. But you don't see too many going back the other way, and I think that's because we're right. So
I got some dark history for you off recording.
Yeah, well, and there's also the people with like really cool Marxist parents, like Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. That is just endlessly shocking to me.
Y'all want to hear some dark shit in relation to that? Barack Obama's stepfather was in Indonesia when they cracked down on communists and killed 1 million people, and he saw a lot of that happen. And Barack Obama still turned out to be Barack Obama.
I didn't know he was there for that.
His stepfather was, yeah.
Oh, see, that's... Yeah, Barack Obama's arc is like the arc of...
Covenant. It'll melt your fucking face off.
Yeah, he's almost like an Emperor Palpatine-like character, where you're just like, how did you see this and then turn out this way? Like, what?
I actually find Emperor Palpatine a little bit more palatable.
A little more Palpatineable.
Oh! Hey, you want to talk about weird arcs, though? I spent about 5 years as an anarcho-primitivist.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I'm not going
to. You can't really be into cars.
Yeah, I don't think any of those folks are listening, so we can say whatever we want about them, right?
Well, I'm not going to shit on it. It makes some good points, but it's just not like a worthwhile thing to consider. We have 7 or 8 billion people. Why pretend that we want to live in a world with 500,000?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I should probably also talk about the car stuff.
How do we do that here?
Yeah, so my relation to cars is I wasn't into them when I was a kid. I didn't really care. I saw them as an appliance until I was about 16 looking for my first car. And that was kind of when I first discovered on Craigslist that, all the muscle cars and the sports cars cost the same as the practical Econobox cars. Sort of. I learned the hard way that that's not exactly true. But the purchase price is about the same. So I started looking like, oh, hey, maybe these Mustangs are cool and Camaros are cool. Wound up buying an 81 Trans Am with a 1966 Corvette motor swapped into it. So that was the 327. I dropped way too much money on that car over the course of like 5 years. Gutting the thing, painting it. I literally never drove the car, because I purchased it and had someone drive it for me because I didn't drive stick at the time. So, a little bit of a sore spot, but it gave me the itch. I learned a lot about cars, and then I branched off on my own, and I got, I had a daily that was, a Toyota Camry, which I'll talk about that later at some point. That was a fun little piece of shit car. But I then later got a 97 Camaro SS with the orange stripes. It was the 30th anniversary package. I bought it with like 60,000 miles on it. I had some fun with it for a while. Put a new rear end in it because I blew up the first one, of course, immediately. But I had about 20,000 miles of fun before I blew the motor, because it's an American car. So the motor blew at 80. Had it rebuilt, and now I'm hopefully going to sell that thing at some point because it's collectible, and I'm more into imports these days. So at one point, I went and saw a drift event in, which is a fun story of how I got there, but I won't get into it. It was just, I saw it live, got to ride in the cars, and I said, okay, I'm getting a drift car. And so I did. I bought a Nissan 350Z. And I have never looked back. That car, hands down, the best car I've ever owned. It's super reliable, and I have put some very hard miles on that car. I used to drift on the street just about every day for a good couple of years, and I've been to dozens and dozens of track events. So I do enjoy getting out there. It's been a slow couple of years for me, though. It's kind of gotten up in miles, so I've been trying to take it kind of easy. And for a while, I was doing a really bad over-the-road driving job and didn't have time for it. But now I'm kind of getting back into things, and I'm planning a pretty substantial engine rebuild and trans swap. And then hopefully next season I'll be out drifting hard again. So that's kind of my car trajectory, as well as my political one. So that's all I've got.
All right, I guess that means it's my turn. So my name is Zach. I think I'm going to start with the car stuff, and then we'll get to politics a little later. Also, I made that Palpatine joke earlier. You're welcome for that.
So yeah, all the credit, all you.
Wouldn't even dream of taking that from you.
I just need to let the listeners know that that's what you're getting into with me. If you like terrible puns, I'm here for it. That's what I'm going to be providing. No, but I've always been into cars ever since I was little. As soon as I could stand, I was turning wrenches, helping my dad work on cars. Owned a lot, broke a lot, learned a lot over the years. Probably shouldn't get into all the ones that I've owned right now. That might take up a little too much time. But suffice to say, I've gone through pretty much every style there is out there. Classics, muscle, econo boxes, little shit cars. What I'm driving these days is a 2011 Subaru WRX hatchback. Some light modifications. It's my daily driver, so I try not to beat it up too bad, but it's hard to resist throwing new parts into cars once you get started. And then I also have a 2004 Audi S4 sitting right in front of me right now, torn into pieces. If you're considering buying an Audi, my advice is don't. They're extremely expensive to work on and unnecessarily complex. But yeah, after, basically my whole life working on cars, it's been a pretty fun little project. Definitely taught me more, than I knew before, which is always the goal for me, is just to keep learning as much as I can, and just keep wrenching. A lot of my spare time is spent working on friends' cars, helping them out with stuff. Got a buddy right now with a Toyota Tacoma that's got a coolant leak that probably be fixing here in the next couple weeks. And that's kind of what I want this podcast to be, as much as it's able to be. I want to help people understand the issues that they're having with their cars, and understand that, with some simple tools and YouTube and a little bit of gumption, you can do just about any standard maintenance stuff to your car. Because, being working class people, we rely on them, a lot of us, to get us to and from work. So when they go down and you got to take it to a shop and you got to pay, some ridiculous price to get something fixed, sometimes that's worth it. Sometimes just not having the headache is worth it. But if you don't have the cash, I think, like a lot of us have gone through, you're just going to have to figure out another way. And it's not as hard as it seems.
It's cheaper to do it twice yourself than to pay somebody else to do it once.
That is right.
Yeah, that is definitely
Not
true.
not necessarily easier,
Yeah.
but cheaper maybe.
But you
Yeah.
learn something. That was literally my mantra getting into cars, was like, it's going to cost me 5 times as much to pay someone else, so I can get this wrong 2 or 3 times before it's a problem.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how much shops charge in labor. A lot of that build that you're looking at that's $2,000, $1,000 or more of that could just be labor time. It's like, you know what? If you got the time to do it yourself, you can save yourself a lot of money and keep your car on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with those simple repairs, them sensors and stuff. Especially if you just go on YouTube and figure out the symptoms your car is doing, you can fix just about anything. You go, oh, that's a cam sensor. They're known to go out on my car, for example. It's a 20-minute job, and you don't have to know anything about cars. You just have to, stuff like that makes a huge difference when you've got a car that's sputtering or not running right, and you gotta get to work, and you don't have money for $1,000 at the shop. YouTube is definitely your friend. A few simple tools. You
That's
can.
how I ended up a Chevy guy, was because with a motor that's 60, that was in production for 70 years or something like that, like, there is no question I have that has not been answered and put on YouTube at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think Zach's spot on. That's definitely something that hopefully people take away from this podcast is us four idiots can do it. You can definitely do it.
Yeah, and one little piece of advice, don't buy the cheapest sensor that they have on Rock Auto. At least in my experience, you're just going to be replacing it in 6 months, after it goes bad again. So maybe the second or third cheapest,
Talk to somebody and find out when you can cheap out and when you can't.
Yeah. But coolant temp sensors for Miatas, go with, the $10 one rather than the $5 one,
Miata's being the sporty-looking Econobots.
I mean, they're not fast, but they are fun, so.
I raced an LS-swapped Miata once. I did not fare well in my van, so.
Yeah,
there's a few
that
of
sounds
those
like
out
it'd be a
there.
scary little deal.
It was at a roadkill event. It was a good time, but I did not do well.
Well, is that everything? Zach, did you touch on politics, or did I just totally forget that?
I have not gone over
Okay.
that yet. So politics, that's been a long journey for me, a lot like Bryant and Connor both. I grew up in a very conservative, very Christian household, and slowly made my way further and further left as I grew up. I would talk with other people about politics, and it's, I wouldn't say I was necessarily radicalized by those people. I more just moved to the left on my own, but talking to other people made me realize that a lot of my beliefs were pretty shitty to other people. And, you know, I just, in my heart didn't want to be that way. So you know, I started reading more and learning more about, you know, well, what's really the best, you know, political belief for all people, and, you know, what's going to cause the least harm to everyone. And I moved, you know, into kind of an alt-right, you know, right libertarian thing, or it was like, yeah, the government's bad, they're causing all the problems, but I wasn't really realizing capitalism was one of the bigger problems out there. And so then I moved more towards like liberalism, and I was like, yeah, this is it, this is where it is. And I was like, oh no, this has its issues too. And then I, you know, kind of didn't really know where I was there for a while, but I knew I wasn't really down with like corporate Democrats and that kind of ilk of people. And these days I would consider myself an anarchist, probably anarcho-communist most days. Little wiggly in there, not sure exactly, but most of the time I think anarcho-communism is about what I believe. But yeah, definitely into left unity. You know, whatever gets us there. We just got to get this shit out of the way first. Then we can have our infighting squabbles.
Yeah, that's what's beautiful about all of this is like if an ML can get along with a bunch of like spineless anarchists, like
hey, and if a bunch of good-hearted anarchists could get along with an asshole ML, you know?
Hey, me being an asshole has nothing to do with my Leninism.
Well, as long as we can all bond over cars and the shit boxes and financial mistakes we've all shared in, we can make anything work.
I've never made any financial mistakes, just investments that haven't paid off yet.
I like that framing.
Yeah, if you keep all the shit boxes, then you can definitely look at it that way.
Oh, I catch a lot of flack for the fact that I've literally never sold anything.
I have a friend like that. He has a garage full of, 8 of the same part for all the same motors. They're all Fox body Mustangs, and he just hoards all the parts. I keep telling him to sell them, and he never does.
Technically, I think I own 9 vans.
Well, and I've got about 3-4 moped engines and or frames in my crawl space right now, taken apart. So,
oh, dude, my whole basement and attic are full of Harley parts.
We'll probably have episodes about scooters and Harleys and all kinds of dumb stuff. And hoarding, yeah. All my collections of newspapers that I have stacked up in the hallway, kind of, leaning over, squishing the cat.
I'm eventually going to get around to that sandwich that I made in 2015.
I love how we're kind of talking out both sides of our mouths here. We're saying, learning to fix your own car, you'll save a lot of money, this and that. Well, then we all talk about our financial mistakes and how bad it is that we're spending all this money on shitbox cores.
Dude, a set of sockets will cost you about $20. Building a race car will cost you your livelihood. I'd be doing fine if I didn't decide to build a drag van.
Yeah, you just gotta you just gotta keep it from becoming an addiction, just like be able to quit cars when you're before it becomes a problem.
You can't.
Fuck that! I'm addicted to acquiring addictions.
There's a reason they call it carcane.
Hell, this year I've made the decision that it's time to start drifting on brand new tires instead of stealing tires out of the dumpsters at the dealerships. So that's a big decision. That's gonna be new tires every track day. So it's an addiction. It's not as bad. They last a lot longer that way. And then I'm not paying to have them mounted as much. But yeah, it's an addiction.
I mean, if you really want to go hardcore, you could get a tire machine in your garage. And
I'm living in a 12-floor apartment right now.
So in your bathroom.
I don't think my girlfriend wants a tire machine in our bedroom, unfortunately. I'm wearing her down, though.
I'm not going to name names or locations, but what you can also do is find like a low... Is my computer on?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think so.
Yeah, like I glitched out for a second. Yeah, I'm not going to name names or places, but I did know some people who would steal wheels off of rental cars after the rental agency closed down.
After it shut down, is that what you said?
Well, no, like it would close for the night, and then they would just go grab wheels off of the cars. Like, I'm slightly exaggerating. They only did that once.
You know what? They were probably insured. It's fine.
Well, also just fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them.
I'm pretty sure Hertz Rent-A-Car like got more money than I do, so whatever.
I'm pretty sure they got more money than God, so.
I don't know. How much God do they have?
Too much.
Always the right answer.
Well, that seems like probably a pretty good place to end it. I think we got some good banter, some good intros there. I think that was.
We can edit this down into something coherent and make us.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of the banter was. I mean, listen to it, but banter.
Yeah,
was
no,
probably
I don't think we really need to cut a whole lot of anything, but.
I tried not to be overwhelming, but it's really hard for me to shut up.
No, I think we got good content out of everyone, so that's what we're doing here, minding the content.
Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, if we're not making money off this, what are we even doing, right?
Like I said before, we got to get that Patreon up. We got to all move to Brooklyn, start doing cocaine,
Honestly, I have been meaning to start doing cocaine for years now. It's on my to-do list, but it's like after 3 engine swaps, so who the fuck knows when I get around to it.
I feel like you probably want to have the financial security to do that, right?
If you just trade the car addiction for the cocaine addiction, it would probably save you money, honestly.
Like, I agree with you, but I do know a guy who did something similar on accident, and apparently it's not cheaper.
Damn.
But his was heroin, not cocaine, so,
Well, there's also some benefit to being able to do a bunch of coke and stay up all night working on your car. So there's a little bit of give and take there.
Are we advocating for cocaine right now? Because I'm about it.
But I've been clear. I have never done cocaine, but I'm never going to tell somebody what to do. Like, probably don't do heroin.
Yeah, definitely don't do crocodile. I'll say that pretty definitively.
I've done a lot of drugs, but yeah, I'm going to say don't do that one.
I read some story years ago. I think it was on Jalopnik that this guy's neighbor was a meth head and once stayed up all night replacing all the wiring on his motorcycle with blue wire because it looked cooler. and then it didn't run after that.
Okay, I've replaced all the wiring on a motorcycle with black wire because it didn't run before and that's all we had. So sometimes you just do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a good flow state, you got a good supply and
you'll definitely always remember which
Oh
wire
yeah,
goes
totally.
where.
Easy to troubleshoot.
Well, when you drive stuff that's like 50 years old, there's only so many wires on board, so it's fine.
Fair point.
That's the same motorcycle that to this day you still start it by touching an exposed wire to the battery.
Yeah. I had that reminds me, I had a lawnmower once that I found sitting under a tree in my friend's yard, and eventually, drained all the water out of it, got it to run. But there was no, it had, almost no compression left. I think it was old enough that it had points, and those were probably gone bad, but I didn't want to replace any of that stuff. So to start it, you had to open up the air cleaner box, pour a tiny little bit of gasoline in there, and then crank it and start it. And then one day my roommate was going to mow the lawn, and he got it out and did that whole procedure, and then it just backfired through the carb and caught on fire and melted the whole thing. So then it's like,
oh, I can't even count the amount of vehicles I've caught on fire.
Then it's like, yeah, I think this thing's cooked. We'll just, splurge for a $50 Craigslist, lawnmower rather than a free one.
I'm notorious at my work for pulling an old Blazer into the bay to work on it one day, and I made it live up to its name.
Yeah, like the Fiero. I think weren't those known for catching fire? Or am I thinking of something else?
I
I
think
don't
they
know.
were. I think they were. And then there was millions of jokes about them being Fieros
Yeah,
catching fire.
I'll have to ask the Fiero owner that I know about that. He'll probably say, "No, that didn't happen."
It makes me think of the joke: any machine is a smoke machine if you operate it wrong enough.
Wow, even like a simple machine, like a crowbar, like a lever.
Yeah, if you operate that wrong enough, it will definitely
Okay.
make smoke.
The simpler machine, the wronger you have to operate it. But yeah,
that makes sense. So, like an oil refinery, there's a million wrong ways to operate that wrongly to make smoke. But like,
dude, if you've never gotten so angry at a crowbar that you threw it hard enough to make sparks, then I
Okay.
can't relate to you.
Fair point.
I think the simpler the machine, the harder it is to make it a smoke machine. But I think it could be done with just about anything.
I stand corrected.
As a CNC operator, can
yes,
verify.
Definitely. I've seen the smoke.
I've made the smoke.
Yeah, I think the worst thing I've done with a machine is drop a drill chuck on my hand and crack a fingernail, but nothing.
I sent you pictures where I dropped a whole fucking chuck on my hand like a couple of months ago.
I don't think I saw those pictures.
Oh, I mean, they're grisly, so I wouldn't like. I'm only just starting to get feeling back in that finger. Dude, I dropped like an 80-pound like 4-jaw chuck on my hand.
I don't need to see that.
I'd like to see that. You can send it to me. I like that shit.
It wasn't that bad, but it was one of those moments where once you peeled the wound open and saw how deep it went, I got a little woozy.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you guys. I chopped my thumb open this week. I've got like 7 stitches in it right now.
Oh shit! I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, it was fun. Fun time.
Shit! I broke character as an asshole. I showed compassion.
I don't like this side view. Go back to being mean. This is weird.
Yeah,
Zach, you do construction work? Is that where that happened? Yeah, yep, that'll do it.
Yep, there's an exposed piece of framing, and I just smacked my thumb right into it like a real dumbass.
I feel like if I did construction, I would hurt myself in more ways than I already do at my job.
It's very easy to do.
I just have really severe mental health issues, and I can't relate to doing anything constructive.
I mean,
90% of my job is demo, so I just get to break shit most of the time.
I've done that before. It's pretty fun.
It is.
I did a little short stint doing demo work in New Orleans after the hurricane there, and saw some interesting stuff like 6 inches of mud on floors and some real funky refrigerators. And we have just a short little history excursion here for you now. We might have some more in the episode, but let's start off. Let's do this dollop style. I'll just yell out a date here. 1888.
That was a good year.
The first naphtha launch appeared in Britain. The Zephyr was the invention of Alfred Yarrow, a well-known builder of steam launches for some years previously. So what is a steam launch? A steam launch is a steam-powered small boat, sort of like, I don't know, what you today have the equivalent of like a inboard motorboat or something like that, or maybe a larger outboard boat. It's basically something that you'd cruise around on a lake or a river or close to the shore. What today the owner of a car dealership would own to go out and get drunk on the weekends.
Wait, do they have super cool motors on them? Are they fast?
Well, back in the day, they were just like little steam engines that made like 20 horsepower or something. So,
is it something you could put a Trump flag on and then sink other boats with Trump flags?
Yes, definitely.
Awesome.
Although they're a little thinner and smaller draft than like a modern motorboat, so they're not going to kick up a huge wake. So you need to really be pushing it to sink the
No,
other boats.
if you love the president, you really need a huge wake, like something that'll sink everything around you.
Yeah. So the problem with steam launches is regulation, that pesky government. There was a lot of boiler explosions back in the day, because they didn't really have the metallurgy and design engineering.
So it seems like a little regulation was probably just what they needed.
Yeah. So there was a law in the U.S. That all steamboats had to carry a licensed engineer at all times. And if you just got your little pleasure yacht out on the river, who wants to hire an engineer? Like, that's bullshit. So there was this guy, Starling Burgess, was an engineer and boat designer, and paid for his wife, Rosamond, to become an engineer, a licensed engineer, so they could just go out on the boat themselves. But most people didn't do that.
Okay.
So there was a loophole that someone figured out called the naphtha engine, an alternative to the steam engine. So what is naphtha? It's a petroleum distillate, a hydrocarbon mixture. The most modern equivalent would be like Coleman camping fluid or fuel, like for a stove or a lamp or whatever.
Is that related to napalm?
It comes from the same root word, which I believe is Middle Persian naft, which means wet. So it's similar to kerosene. It's like a little heavier than the gasoline. When you're distilling petroleum, you've got a big column, and you basically just pull off different grades of material at different levels, and naphtha is the one in between, like kerosene and diesel or something. So, someone decided to make an engine. Alfred Yarrow designed an engine that could use naphtha as both the fuel and the working fluid. So what that means is you have a burner that burns naphtha, and it pressurized a boiler full of naphtha that then ran the engine.
This sounds really dumb. This sounds real dumb. This sounds... Okay, we need more of that pesky regulation here, because these people left to their own devices are just something else.
Yeah, so...
Lubricating things with something volatile and explosive, I see no problem here. As someone volatile and explosive, I'm pro this.
Yeah, this is the innovation in the market, isn't it?
The problem was unsafe steam engines that exploded. So to make them safer, we'll fill them full of fuel and pressurize that and make it real hot.
This sounds like a bomb that just happened to work as an engine.
Yeah, pretty much. It's I don't know how else to explain it. It's like I don't know, taking an engine and running kerosene through the coolant passages, and then
like having try this with my small block. This sounds like a solid idea.
Yeah, like just better hope that the head gasket doesn't fail, and or a coolant line doesn't spring a leak or something.
Nah, that doesn't sound important.
Yeah. So you've got most of these boats are about 24 feet long. The first one that I talked about, the Zephyr, had an aluminum hull, which was hot shit for back in the day. Most of them were made of wood.
Should have gone with magnesium.
So it looks very similar. I'll post a link in the Slack here so you guys can look at some of the pictures.
They should have just had a magnesium-powered engine made from magnesium with a magnesium hull.
Yes.
That sounds just as safe.
Now you're thinking like a libertarian.
Fuck you.
That's a real insult here.
Fuck you, ANCAP.
So your typical naphtha engine, it has a small vertical boiler. They're usually if it was a steam engine, it would be called a water tube design. So you have a bunch of coiled tubing in sort of like a
I don't know, it looks like a giant spring, basically, if you look at the pictures. And then it just has a shroud around it and a burner in the middle. So the fluid goes in the tubes, I believe usually at the bottom as a liquid, and then it exits at the top as a vapor. And then it goes into the engine. There are 3-cylinder simple expansion engine. So that means that you basically only have expanding fluid at the top of the piston, rather than some, like a more typical steam engine is double acting, where it has steam going at the top and the bottom of the piston. So this was a simple expansion engine, 120 degree crankshaft spacing because it's a 3-cylinder, and so they're self-starting also.
Hey, what's more capitalist than a self-starter?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wait, hold on. So what is a self-starting motor? I'm not familiar with it.
It's a bootstrap.
So, like, if you just had a single cylinder steam engine, and you turn on the steam valve, it won't just start running. If it's at like bottom dead center, because
you can't. There's nowhere for it to push it.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So, like, if you have a multi-cylinder engine, especially if it's like 3 or more and single acting, then it will, at least one of those pistons is going to be in the right spot to start it moving without any weirdness.
Gotcha.
Let's see. So you had a fuel tank at the front of the boat, and then you'd have to like hand pump it to pressurize it, kind of like a Coleman stove. And then you had a little pressure jet in there that you would turn on, and it would heat up the boiler, and then eventually it would warm up, and it would be self-pressurizing, so you didn't need to pump that anymore. And then, excuse me, it was a downdraft boiler. Yeah.
Those are words.
So that means that the flame goes down through the boiler, and then up out the stack. Because basically, if you have a heat exchanger, which a boiler is a heat exchanger.
Yep.
Like think of a air to air intercooler. If you have the fluids going in opposite directions, then that's the most efficient way to transfer heat. So, like, if you have the flame going down and the boiling fluid going up, that's a more efficient design than if you have the flame going up also. So the naphtha fuel also acted as the lubricant, and you had a wet sump, just a regular sump underneath. And it had pretty simple, it had a camshaft on top, but with eccentrics, and transverse slide valves. So basically you have like a little crank with a sliding, basically just a flat piece of metal that uncovers some ports at the top of the cylinder head. So it's not super high tech by today's standards, but those work. Slide valves are self-sealing, and they, because they're sliding, they lap themselves into a good seal. As they wear, they make a better seal actually sometimes. Yeah. And since you're pumping hydrocarbons through it, it doesn't rust or anything. So, you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff.
That's all about that grind. I respect it.
Yeah. And then it just has a water-cooled condenser in the hull, in the keel. So basically your vapor starts in the boiler, goes through the engine, condenses, goes back to the fuel tank, and then is pumped back to the boiler and the burner. So there's also, I mean, other people have done hydrocarbon steam engines before. They're sometimes called vapor engines or something like that. So this isn't like the only thing, but I just thought it was an interesting concept because it was basically designed to exploit a loophole in regulations, and ended up with something that's like less safe than an actual steam boiler.
Wait. So when you bypass regulations, it makes you less safe?
Yeah.
I'm gonna need some more evidence of that, son.
So, Brian, I'm curious. In your research, did you come across anything that suggested that this had some catastrophic effects when it didn't go quite right?
It actually, I mean, I don't have any documentations. It does say on the Wikipedia here, despite the obvious hazards and occasional reports of fires, the naphtha launch appears to have worked reasonably well and safely. So I think, I don't know, maybe they were a little less pressure than the typical steam engine, or maybe they just weren't used that often. But
Yeah, so there wasn't really that much documented cases of catastrophic failures, but like it seems like something they made less safe, and so there was probably some issues there. But
yeah,
Well, how widespread was this? Was usage of a naphthalene engine?
I mean, it was basically just rich guys that took their little yachts out on the weekends. Maybe not like petite bourgeois sort of guys, I believe, were the people buying these.
Well, knowing that, I wish they had exploded more.
Yeah. I do have a headline here from the New York Times in July of 1904 that says, "Naphtha launch ablaze, menaces yachts at the rendezvous of the New York Yacht Club." So some guy took one of these to yacht club meetup.
he wasn't rich enough to fit in with the rest of the yacht owners, so he brought his little unregulated pile of shit, and it caused a problem. That's probably when they stopped letting petite bourgeois join them in their yacht cruises.
Goddamn old or new money messing everything up. Yeah. Here, let me read this real quick. The 25-foot naphtha launch of the steam yacht Rambler, belonging to Lewis Cass Ledyard, Commodore of the New York Yacht Club, lying at the Yacht Club rendezvous off East 24th Street, caught fire around 11 o'clock last night and drifted out among J.P. Morgan's steam yacht Corsair, W.B. Leeds's Noma, and other yachts. So he was threatening the big money guys with his burning piece of shit.
So we were actually close because of this stupid Hold on. So a loophole exploiting to get around regulations almost burned down J.P. Morgan's fucking yacht with him on it.
It doesn't say that he was on it. But...
Okay, and well, I wouldn't be
sarcastically condemning regulations, but maybe they're onto something.
Yeah, I think this has convinced me to be like an ANCAP now. Fuck regulations. If it's gonna burn down J.P. Morgan, let's get his ass.
We're just gonna go start our own ANCAP podcast.
Just put those ideas out there. Yeah, I'm with it now. Oh, history is just so cruel sometimes. God, we were
so close to greatness.
It was also a similar idea was also used in a French locomotive in 1914, and then there was also plans to use it on a Chrysler designed tank in the 60s, but that never panned out. But that's a little preview to a future episode that I will be talking about later.
Woo!
Mystery. Woo. Something to look forward to. Yeah. So that's all I have on the naphtha launch, or naphthalene, or whatever it is.
Well, that
should
was
we talk
fun.
about anything else?
That's definitely that's a weirdo little motor setup. All right, that was. How did you come across this, Brian?
So for a while, I've been looking at steam engines. I started to actually design a steam engine when I had access to CAD software. I was gonna design a 50cc steam engine and put it on a moped.
Gotcha.
But I don't know. In Colorado Springs, there's a mining museum that I went to a couple times when I was a kid, and they have a couple of steam engines there on display. Some of them working. They run them off compressed air. But when I was a kid, I thought, oh man, these are so cool. And I don't know. I guess I haven't really lost that. I've just been looking at steam engines ever since. And then, every once in a while you go down a rabbit hole and find something really weird, like
Yeah.
like this.
Well,
You know.
that's all. I don't ever look into steam engines, which is why, of course, I don't come across these sorts of things. But this is all right. This is cool for sure.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I actually know a guy locally who is a machinist and like from scratch built his own steam engine for a little rowboat that he's got.
Nice. For a rowboat, you said?
I say rowboat. I think it's a little bit bigger than that. I've only met the guy a couple of times. He's like, we have a mutual friend, and he's like, the mutual friend has gone out on the river with him a whole bunch of times on his steamboat.
Okay. Well, that is a steam launch, basically. And maybe he should convert it into a naphtha engine.
I'll run that by him. Like, hey, you know that thing that you have that's actually pretty unsafe? Do you want to make it more unsafe?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen, there's a few different people that have made like modern attempts at steam-powered cars. And most of them are terrible and stupid, but also pretty fascinating. So I don't know, like there's no connection to like left-wing politics there, but maybe we could do an episode about that in the future. I don't know if people are interested.
Any alternative fuel source, I think, has got there's a connection there. Anything that isn't necessarily gasoline or diesel, it's got some. It's worth talking about, because I'm going to talk about electric cars that, in like drifting, because that's becoming a thing, but not really too much left-wing politics there. We have to add that because they're electric cars, and that's sort of the future, and that's maybe good, maybe not. I don't know. There's some. It's not perfect.
Well, I guess going off of that, like there is a little bit of a connection because sometime in the 60s, there's a guy, I forget his name, I think he was Australian, who converted some kind of Chevy to steam engine power. And he shopped it around. He brought it to different auto manufacturers.
Did he end up dead?
No. Well, I mean, he did, but of old age,
Okay.
Not suicide by 2 to the back of the head.
No. We could.
Okay.
I mean, we could do a whole show about all those like 200 mile per hour or 200 mile per gallon carburetor things and all those scams and rumors about that. But this guy,
a friend of mine who like knows a guy. His cousin's best friend actually built one of those.
Yeah,
and they killed him.
Yeah, one of those hydrogen things or whatever.
Yeah,
but
a million miles to a gallon and et cetera, et cetera.
0 point energy. But this guy, his steam powered Chevy, it was for emissions. So this was like in the 60s when they were first proposing emissions regulations. And the good thing about a steam engine is you've got a burner and a boiler because you can burn it as lean or as rich as you want and get complete combustion in there. So you don't have like unburned hydrocarbons that make smog. You do, if you have it real hot, you can get like nitrogen oxides.
Yeah, you can get NOx.
I hate NOx.
But it's very clean burning, so that's why he was doing it. I mean, it did only get like 15 miles per gallon or something like that. And
I wish things I owned got 15 miles per gallon. You guys are spoiled with your modern imports.
Yeah, and he also had to fill it with like 300 pounds of water, in it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
You'd have to fill it up with distilled water whenever you wanted to drive it. So it had some downsides. But for a while there, I was like, oh man, I could design a cool steam engine that would like use modern technology. And I don't know if someone wants to pay me to do that, I still might, but that's all I've got. Do we want to wrap up, Zach? It's 4:00 here. Did you need to get going?
Yeah, I think it's about that time for me.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and click stop recording unless someone else had something to say for this little segment.
I have something really important to say, probably. You should stop recording and we'll see.